Thank you, Fabiola. I want to thank the Pennsylvania Tea Party, first of all, for setting all of this up, and Ted Voron for video recording all of this so we can put it on our website. And most importantly, I want to thank all of the people who've come to this presentation, and hopefully you will like what you see. I'm Peter Wolf, and I'm one of the co-founders of the voicesofamerica.org. And just by the way, everything that I'm covering in this presentation is obviously being videotaped, which will be on our website. But actually, you can download this PowerPoint presentation as well from our website. So no need to get writer's cramp trying to keep up with all of the content that I'm going to share with you, because there will be a lot of content in the hour or so that we're going to take in this presentation. We're not an organization. I basically got involved in this with Warren Edstrom, the two of us, as part of the Ohio Liberty Council, which is a consortium of Tea Parties and 912 organizations and liberty-loving organizations in Ohio, in 2009. We decided, you know, what is the most important thing, most efficient, effective thing anyone can do to affect politics and policy? And we identified neighborhood organizing, precinct organizing, some call it community organizing. It's all of the same thing. So we decided, okay, let's research this topic and put it on a website and make it accessible for all of the liberty-loving people around the country, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel, that they can basically take advantage of the learning that we have obtained, and that's available on our website. Along the line, Paul Brown out of Columbus, Ohio, joined us, and his particular focus as part of this threesome on the Voices of America is the religious freedom issue. And he'll be available with me after the meeting to address any questions that you might have, and address, as a matter of fact, any of the matters pertaining to how to put this into practice. So let's review, why are we here, first of all, okay? It's always good to put into context, why are we here? Well, for the longest time, even before the Tea Party emerged, et cetera, I personally was concerned about the assault on religious liberty in a public square. And you know, I questioned, why are the religious leaders not fighting back? I mean, everywhere crosses are being taken off, you know, of facilities, et cetera. And there was a clear assault on religious liberty in a public square. Well, with Obamacare, what we're seeing now is there's literally an assault on religion going into the religious institutions. And as well as businesses who are that are run by people of faith. Actually, as of August 1st of 2012 here, every business owner now is subject to Obamacare and has to offer contraceptive and abortion services. As of August 2013, all Catholic institutions, religious institutions such as the hospital system, social services, and the educational system, all employees have to be able to have access to abortion services and contraceptive services. This is very much in violation of the belief of those religious institutions. Therefore, what we are literally witnessing is an attack on religious liberty and on the freedom of speech. And this is core to who we are as a country, but it doesn't matter to those who are in power right now. And in fact, what we're witnessing, you know, those of us who study history, is a repeat of history. It's man's attempt to basically become God, replace God in society, and set up a society, a utopian society in man's making. And there are few in society, the elite, who decide that, you know, we really understand this better and can set up this utopian society for the benefit of all. So that's where we are. Now, some religious leaders are awaking to this and are making statements accordingly. Unfortunately, not enough religious leaders, particularly Catholic bishops and priests, aren't stepping up to the plate. My own priests included. I haven't heard a thing from the pulpit about this religious freedom issue. And in a bulletin, there was just a very short message on page 6 or 7, obviously buried. But there are a number of people of faith, leaders of faith, who are stepping up to the plate. Cardinal Dolan, no government has a right to intrude into the affairs of the church, much less coerce the church faithful to engage or cooperate in any way with immoral practices. Pastor Rick Warren, senior pastor of Saddleback Church, I'd go to jail rather than cave into the government mandate that violates what God commands us to do. And importantly, Cardinal Francis George of Chicago, the state is making itself into a church. He recognizes this. And of course, these guys are theologians. They've studied history, they've studied theology. They understand that, history repeats itself, and we are literally witnessing a repeat of history in this great country of ours. Now, A.D. Lindsay in The Modern Democratic State stated that why, because you may wonder, why the attack on religion? Why is this important? Why is this even in play? Well, he addresses that because the church prevents society from being totalitarian, preventing the omnipotent state. The church is the last great institution in society that can stand up to a government that has a lot of power, from taking over the people and ruling and regulating people in the society. So that's what's at stake. Now, you may wonder, well, what does this kind of society look like? That is like a cradle to grave, the state will take care of you type of society. We don't need to look very far. You just have to look to Europe. I've traveled extensively from Europe. I was born in Germany. I lived in a socialist country. And my parents, it's very clear to me now as an adult, my parents, whenever they talked about relatives and neighbors in terms of who's doing well, never talked about anyone in the private industry, private sector. They always talked about aspiring to become a bureaucrat, because in a society like Germany and most of the European countries, or I would say all of the European countries, the power, the money, all resides with the bureaucracy, the government, the elite who make it in government. So let's look at Sweden. Sweden is viewed as the utopian socialist country in Europe. It doesn't get any better than Sweden. This is almost like paradise on earth, okay? So where is Sweden? Well, and by the way, there's a great articulation of economies, the markets, and the church in the book, The Church and the Market. I would highly recommend that. People who I've suggested this to and read it said it's a great basics in economics and how it relates to principles and values. So, despite the title, it's not really a religious book. It's really more of an economics book. But I extracted this content straight out of that book. Sweden, destroyed family units. So this utopian society that some politicians are aspiring to, they would get us to this kind of end result. Destroyed family units. Fully 2/3 of the population live in single-person households. Children are born out of wedlock. Over half of the Swedish births are out of marriage. The church is dead. The churches are empty. The churches are there for tourists to visit. Go to Europe, visit any church in any country, you will see the same. So basically, I think we've seen within this country already a lot of this is playing itself out within the community that's on welfare. The family's destroyed, children are born out of wedlock. Now you say, okay, is that the price you have to pay for the utopian economics, that we're all well off, we all have a great standard of life? Well, guess what? Unfortunately, the standard of life in Sweden, the average standard of life in Sweden is lower than the standard of life in this country for people on welfare. So which system is better? Obviously ours. We have people on welfare who are better off than those in Sweden in this utopian society. So that is why we are here. That's the context. That's why we're excited. and mobilized, and the silent majority is awakening to this threat to our country, relative to what the founding fathers had in mind as documented in the Constitution. So the question then becomes, well, what do we do? Okay, I mean, we're just like citizens, so we don't have a lot of power, we don't have a lot of money. Well, that's precisely what we studied in 2009, Warren Edstrom and I, to figure out, what is the most effective thing to do in politics and policy. We had a lot of rallies in those days, and we attended those rallies. Well, those are like pep rallies. In the end of the day, you have to play the game. So the question was, well, what's the game? In politics, how do you win? Now, I'm here to tell you, a lot of people of faith and community of faith are migrating to, let's register voters. That's easy. That's an activity. It's not very effective unless it's done in the context of precinct organizing, neighborhood organizing, community organizing. If you do just the registration of voters, there is no statistical evidence that it works, that it will result in more votes on election day. And that's straight out of a book that I've read, in addition to many other books, as I researched this whole topic of how to win elections. And in it, there's one paragraph. I actually went back recently because, a lot of people of faith are starting to pursue this voter registration. That's what we got to do. And I said, well, I don't seem to recall reading anything in Get Out the Vote, which is a statistical analysis of what works done by 2 Yale professors. It's the Bible in how to win elections, okay? One paragraph dedicated to it, and it basically said there's no statistical evidence that voter registration by itself works. Then I did some additional research. I even called and talked with the CEOs of some of these voter registration websites. I won't name any names, and I said, look, based on everything I've read, all the research I've done on the internet, I find no statistical correlation that voter registration by itself is effective. Please provide me with documentation that it works. To this day, I have not received the documentation. There is none. End of discussion. And I can say that with great confidence because our opposition, because you may be thinking actually, well, our opposition does voter registration. So what's Pete talking about? Well, they do voter registration, but I found a video, and I link it off of our website because I've got a section on voter registration. If you want to do voter registration, it's actually based on Smart Girl Politics. They did a great job in documenting how to do voter registration in malls and churches, wherever, and I documented that. But on there, I also have a big caution box talking about this very issue because now I'm more educated on voter registration. And I found our opposition, one of the senior community organizers, is there talking about voter registration by itself does not work. It has to be done in the context of a community organizing effort, which means you stay in touch with those same people you register all the way until they vote. Now, our opposition, they have developed the science around us as we studied voter registration. And guess what? Why did they need Golden Week? Is everyone familiar with Golden Week? Does that mean? Okay. Golden Week, we have it in Ohio, and a lot of states have this. It's literally the period of time during which you can go and register and vote all at the same time. In Ohio, it's 1 week. Now, why was that so important to our opposition? Well, guess what? People who don't inherently take the initiative and go and register themselves to vote, do you think they will take the initiative to go and vote, even though you got them registered? Probably not. Logic tells you probably not, okay? Well, they figured all this out a long time ago, and that's why it became so important to, once I get the people identified who hadn't registered, to get them to register, and oh, by the way, once I've got them there, to also vote. Now it's done. because I can't rely on those people to go and vote, down the road. So that's why Golden Vote Week is so important to our opposition. So enough on that. So in politics, the game, how to win elections, is to get out to vote. Now we all vote. That was what I did. It's a civic duty. I individually went to vote. Well, getting out to vote, we call it neighborhood organizing, precinct organizing, community organizing. Again, it's all of the same. Is nothing more than basically identifying in your neighborhood who is like-minded, who has the same principles and values you do, and making sure they vote in an election. It's as simple as that. This is not rocket science, okay? Now, I'll speak about how to identify who's like-minded, okay? So you don't knock on every door. That's the only scientific aspect of this whole presentation, but again, that's not rocket science. And then, there's a mechanism, a work process, so to speak, on how to make sure they go and vote. Here's the book I referenced earlier, Get Out to Vote. It's the Bible, statistical analysis of what works in winning elections. It's written by Donald Green and Alan Gerber. And just to be clear, what I'm talking about is about how to get out to vote and win the election, okay? There are two elements to winning elections. There's messaging and there's getting out to vote. And we're talking about how do I get people to go and vote, okay? I'm not addressing the messaging piece. But the messaging, as you will see, this year in 2010, we're in a unique period of time, and campaign managers still are not grasping that something massive has changed in our country, that what's at stake is a principle-based ideological argument, and you don't need to do a lot of messaging, other than to explain to people what's at stake is one vision of this country, which is an omnipotent government, cradle to grave. We will take care of you. We will decide on the rules and regulations, and the church will not get in our way. The other vision is the one the Founding Fathers had and captured in the Constitution, the American exceptionalism, the success this country has had, and that's why they're the most powerful, most successful country in this world. And that's why immigrants, like my parents with 3 sons in tow, have come to this country because of that American exceptionalism. If they wanted the omnipotent government, cradle to grave, they might as well have stayed home in Europe. Here's Howard Dean. He really understood the power of neighborhood organizing, precinct organizing, community organizing. And he said, election by election, state by state, precinct by precinct, door by door, vote by vote, we're going to lift our party up and take this country back for the people who build it. And he was a strong advocate of the ground game. And the ground game of our opposition has in fact gotten better and stronger and more effective. Now, what do you need for this kind of ground game or neighborhood organizing? Again, this is not rocket science, it's very simple. Need volunteers. You need people who have awakened to what's at stake and saying, by golly, and we had a discussion before the presentation of, most of us were not interested in politics. We had other things we were pursuing in our lives, but we've decided we need to get involved in politics and figure out what's going on and how to save this country. And, bless all of you for doing that. So we need volunteers, we need a walking list, and I'll talk about that. How do you get a walking list? That's basically, how do I find out whose door in the neighborhood do I knock on? And by the way, you don't need permission from anyone, like the parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, of doing this, okay? A lot of people are of the misconception, oh, isn't this the job of the precinct captain of the party? Well, yeah, they should. But most precinct captains don't do this. And second of all, even if they did do that, there's no reason you as an independent citizen couldn't organize, based on your values and principles, the neighborhood to become a very powerful force in your neighborhood. And just think, if everyone else did that, how powerful we the people can become in taking this country back from these career politicians. And I'm talking both parties. Okay, they're career politicians, they're elitists, and they're spending our money. They're taxing us, taking money from us, and they're spending it the way they want to. And there's a lot of corruption that goes along with that. You need a simple script. What do I say when I knock on someone's door? And a door hanger, maybe something you can print out, you can leave behind. So it's very simple in terms of what neighborhood organizing entails. Now, I'm not one to just like talk about this. I like to do it. So I walk the talk, right? So in 2010, my wife and I decided we're going to do this in our precinct. And we did this we live in John Boehner's district in Southwest Ohio. This is Westchester 24. That's our precinct. That's our neighborhood. And I went through everything I'm going to share with you. And I got 6 couples. And I intentionally picked people who have never done this before for either party. So they were true novices. And I wanted to see how they would do this and how they liked it. And so we found 6 couples in the neighborhood. One of them was a registered Democrat, by the way. She corralled my wife when she took the garbage can and said, I saw Pete's picture in the paper. He talked to the local, one of the local organizations, and I need the help. What's he doing? How can I help him? She said, heck, help us right here in our neighborhood. Go door to door. He will tell you what to do. So we gave these 6 couples, there are 280 homes, 40 homes per couple. Very manageable. That's like 2 hours to do. We assigned those homes, so we gave them addresses. I gave them a script. Here's what you tell those people when they first open the door, and asked them to go out and vote. I gave them a door hanger, which I'll share with you later, what that looked like. And the net effect of doing this in 2010, we increased the conservative voters going to the polls and voting by 32%. This is powerful stuff. It's simple, but it is very powerful. And literally, we got 114 neighbors to go and vote who probably would not have voted based on, past voting turnout. Now, how did these volunteers feel? I'm so busy working on the Voices of America and the travel and giving presentations, I forgot to ask for feedback. Well, they were sufficiently pumped. They sent me emails, said, and here's what they said. It's like, overall, it was a positive experience, and it got to be relatively easy to do once I got through the first few houses. I mean, everyone is like anxious to first homes, right? My wife said, she swore to me, I will not knock on a door. I'm totally supportive of you, Pete. You knock, I stand behind you, I nod my head, I'm supportive, okay? And we did that with some other organizations, went around. By the time we did it in our neighborhood, we did 2 doors, then she said, Pete, I'll take that side of the street, you take that side of the street. Sufficiently comfortable with the process. This is not intimidating whatsoever, despite what a lot of people think. I saw 35 out of 39 homes assigned in the past 2 days. I was thanked by many homes. This is really satisfying, right? For doing this, and only one home said they were not interested in what I had to say. That's okay. Sorry that I bothered you. Have a good day. That's all. This is not a debating match. This is not a chance to argue with people. This is an opportunity to identify who in your neighborhood is like-minded and then making sure they vote. End of discussion. Of the 17 that were home, I got 15 yeses. Probably half the people I spoke with thanked me for going out. And we hear this from leaders all over the country. Okay, this is a very positive experience. I really appreciate the opportunity. If I can help with any future events, please call. He'll get a call this election, okay? I did get out 28 of the 32 called yesterday. It was a great experience. Many thanks for calling, many had already voted. So this was basically on election day, okay? My wife and I went down to the polling location, saw who on our list already had voted, and those who didn't vote, we then called them, and that's what the volunteers all got their list. Call these people. They hadn't made it to the polls yet, probably intending to after work, but they hadn't yet gotten there. This is just a list. You'll read this once I post this on the website. We were talking about Barbara Samuelson. In New York, we linked up with her. She's from Ohio. She took our Faith in Action initiative to New York and instituted in a diocese there. And it's become very effective. And she's getting lots of feedback from people of faith that this is what they're looking for. Thank you for laying the groundwork and having this tool ready for this moment. I told the group today tonight, that they don't have to reinvent the wheel, and gave them your website. This is Barbara talking. Father, I blocked out his name, was particularly glad to know your work is there to help parishes like this. Highly positive reaction from individuals. This was the most moving testimony. One lady told me she belongs to a prayer group and they meet each week, and this is what they have been praying for. She was so grateful to know these things are there and being used that she teared up twice and is eager to tell her prayer group and put it on her site. And she will link to the Voices of America. Powerful stuff. People of faith are yearning to find out, what can we do? And do not rely on the leadership in churches to tell them. A lot of them are afraid. We have seen this administration is not afraid to use the IRS and the Justice Department in selectively applying the law and coming after you. And the church leaders are acutely aware of that and are afraid. They're afraid of losing their 501c3 status. Now, with a nonprofit 501c3 status, literally the only thing you cannot do is endorse a candidate. You can certainly talk about your values, your principles, and telling the parishioners to vote those principles and values, but even at that, a lot of the parishes are afraid to do that. So basically, I'll share with you a strategy of how to deal with that and make it easy for everyone, because we don't have time to try to convince the church leaders what needs to be done, etc. We need action, and we need action quickly, and we need to get people out doing neighborhood organizing, which is the most efficient and effective thing any one of us can do to win this election. So why does this process work? Why does this process, which seems so simple, of just asking like-minded neighbors to go and vote, work? Well, it's sad, but it's true. And historically, as I've done this research, I've noticed this has been true all the way through in the early 1900s as well. 80% of the people register to vote, of those eligible. And a precinct, by the way, consists of about 1,000 voters on average. Okay, some are like 1,200, 1,100, but on average, 1,000 eligible voters are in every precinct. Okay. 80% bother to take the time to register to vote. Of the total eligible voters, only 60% come out on any given election, an important election, the general and midterm elections. It's even worse during primaries, when you elect who the candidates ought to be in the Democrat and the Republican Party. 30% of the people come out to vote. And I'll show you later on how you can take advantage of that. But this is why neighborhood organizing works. Getting out to vote works and is the most impactful thing you can do. Because, in the end of the day, you need a majority to win. And just like any other game, if your side does it better than the other side, you win. There is no absolute standard you have to achieve in doing this work. Now, this is straight out of the Get Out the Vote book written by these two Yale professors. Campaign managers hate these statistics because they don't abide by them, okay? It exposes them for not doing what's really important. It is what it is, right? We the people need to learn this, do it, and we will win, and we will beat those campaign managers. They have nothing on us, okay? I indexed it 100%. If you go around in your neighborhood door to door, let's say that's 100% effectiveness, okay? And this is straight out of the book. I've just re-indexed it. If you go into another neighborhood and help a friend who is doing this in their neighborhood, your effectiveness drops to 63.3%. And the reason is it's not your neighborhood. There's a lot of power in knocking on someone's door and saying, yes, I'm a concerned neighbor. I live over there in that part of the subdivision, okay? And I'm concerned for these reasons. Doing another neighborhood, you lose some of that. Passionate phone volunteers, the effectiveness. See, you hear a lot about phone banking. Particularly the campaign managers, they love these phone banks, okay? Come volunteers, come and make phone calls. Well, if you are passionate, and what do I mean by that? Well, it means when you call someone and say, look, I'm Pete Wolf, I'm a concerned citizen, I'm calling you, because I'm concerned because of this. Are you concerned about that? We have a conversation. You can tell if I'm like really concerned or am I a paid phone caller, right? We can all tell these professional callers, the ones we hang up on, right? Okay. So you can tell someone is sincere, they really believe in it, and you have a conversation. Their effectiveness is 23.3%. So making a phone call does work up to a point, but it's not as effective as being there in person, where they can see your body language. They can hear what you're saying. This is what all relationship stuff is built on, right? Versus just hearing a voice. Now it gets worse. The script-based phone banking. These are the professional phone banks that campaign managers love to hire. And they read off of scripts. You can tell they're reading off a script because it's like very fluent. You know, you can't get a word in edgewise. 4.9% effectiveness versus going door to door. Direct mail, nonpartisan, 4.4% effective. You know, all these glossy mailers we get from the parties, 4.4% as effective relative to the 100% effectiveness of going door to door. And I say nonpartisan because you know what? If that mailing is partisan, it's not effective at all. And these robocalls we all get, 0% correlation with getting out the vote. End of discussion. Now, let's be careful. I need to remind you, okay? So you understand exactly what we're talking about. We're talking here today about the most effective thing you can do, and that is getting people to the poll who are like-minded and voting. We're not talking messaging. For messaging, robocalling has an effectiveness. You know, I'm Pete Wolf, I stand for XYZ, please vote for me. I need to let people know who I am and what I stand for. But we're talking about identifying like-minded people and getting them out to vote. And these are the statistics, you know, as proven by these Yale professors in the Bible on what's effective in elections. Now, again, this is not rocket science. Lincoln did what I'm talking about here today. In 1946, Robert Heinlein, a lot of people recognize Robert Heinlein as being a great science fiction writer. Well, he had a career in politics. And after his gig in politics, he decided to write a book. And he did it during the Roosevelt years because, again, we the people were rising up against this government that's getting larger and larger. And, you know, the title of the book is Take Back Your Government. But it was 1946. And he's writing in this book, remember at all times, the votes are in the precincts or in your neighborhood, right? Club meetings are primarily to arouse and hold together your volunteers. Rallies are for morale building. Those are all good common sense. It isn't hard to get adherence to your cause. Either they're on your side already or they can be switched. And volunteer campaigns do not cost much. See, this plays right into the We the People movement we are a part of. You don't need much money to do this. You just need to know the work process, let's say, and do it. Additionally, Napoleon says, you know, when you go into a battle, the morale, the enthusiasm of those doing the battle, there's a factor of 3 to 1 relative to the equipment they bring into the battle. And, you know, good common sense and our life experiences tell us that. Yes, the emotions are very important as we go into this battle. Well, I'm here to tell you, the We the People, as I've talked with leaders around this country, they are pumped for this election. And that will work to our advantage. Now, Heinlein said, yeah, Napoleon says 3 to 1, but I'm here to tell you that in politics, the emotions, it's 10 to 1 is the effectiveness. Again, when you knock on a door, your neighbor can tell you really believe what you're saying, you're in it for a reason, and that's why the volunteers in my precinct, when they went around, were thanked by over half of the people for doing this, because they appreciate you've taken valuable time out of your life to do this, you know, for a reason, because you got more important things to do in this world, and would rather do than going knocking on your neighbor's doors and telling them to please go and vote. Hopefully by now you've grasped the importance, the effectiveness of going door to door in your neighborhood to do this. So you may be asking, well, what do I say when I knock on a door? This is where the paranoia comes in a little of people who've never done this before. What do I say? I mean, you know, If I want to be a salesperson, I would have gone into sales, but I'm an engineer, I'm this, I'm that, but I'm not a salesperson. Well, you're not selling anything. You're not selling a service. All you need to do is, I call it reach, teach, and send. Very simple. You go and knock on the door and say, look, and this is what we did in my precinct in 2010. This is what a lot of Tea Party leaders had their groups do in their neighborhoods. Very effective. Knock on the door, say, I'm a concerned neighbor. Why am I concerned? I'm concerned about this ever-expanding government that is bankrupting us, our children, and our grandchildren, and jeopardizing their future. Okay? Now you can add, and concern about a government that's taking individual liberties away from us, for example, religious freedom. Okay? Don't go off on a tangent of religious freedom and social issues. That doesn't work. Stick to the fundamentals that are in the Constitution, individual liberty, and a limited government. Within 15, 20 seconds of saying this, I'm a concerned neighbor, blah, 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 you will know if that person is aligned or not. Okay, that's it. If you sense they're not aligned, have a good day, I'm out of here. You do not argue, you do not debate. A lot of people will ask for clarification. I remember knocking on a door. There's like this young woman, 4 kids in the background, kids are all over the place. She says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, understandably, she's busy raising a family. So I explained in very simple terms why I'm at your door. Once she heard that, she said, yeah, I'm concerned. I just, haven't had time to stay in touch with what's going on. So that's the teaching opportunity. Not debating, not trying to convince, you just explain why you're concerned. Giving people voting dates and polling location is also very helpful. A lot of people, are kind of oblivious to that. So you will increase your effectiveness in getting someone out to vote by telling them when to vote and where to vote. So that's the teaching. You may find that people move new to the neighborhood, or their older kids who can vote, moved back home because of the economy, right? Check if they're registered to vote in their community. If they're not, that's an opportunity to get them to register to vote, and with the follow-up that I'll be talking about, this whole work process, now you're putting voter registration in the context of a neighborhood organizing, community organizing, and it will work in this context, okay? What I said earlier was just calling someone saying, I noticed you didn't register to vote, can I get you to register to vote? And that's it. That doesn't work. Send. So reach, teach, and send. Get a commitment that they will go and vote. It's amazing the power of asking someone, can I count on you to please vote in November? And you say yes. You realize I took valuable time out of my day to go door to door and asking people to do that, and all you need to do is go vote. That's minuscule in a relationship. So that's going to be on this person's conscience. Like, I better vote. That guy showed up, he spent time and effort doing that, I'll go and vote. You may want to get contact information. And sometimes if you sense, this person is really pumped up and thankful you're there, say, you can help me. You recruit volunteers that way. And you get others to help you do this work. So like I said, the real issues you want to address are very core issues. And see, this is the difference between now versus the usual campaign that campaign managers are used to. We're not talking about splitting hairs on social issues, on other issues. We're talking macro issues. The stake of our country is in jeopardy between one vision, cradle to grave, omnipotent government, another vision, American exceptionalism, as our founding fathers envisioned and captured in the Constitution. And therefore, that's all you need to stick with. You need to just address preservation of individual liberties and constitutional limited government. That's it. And guess what? And there are actually some other polls which I haven't been able to capture yet, but going into 2010, it was the same thing. You have close to 90% of the people on your side. The polling shows you that. And our 2010 experience, people, the We the People movement, going door to door, getting out the vote. And of course, you saw the effectiveness of that because of the election results in 2010. It works. But polling says people already are there. All you need to do is confirm that that household agrees with you and then making sure they go and vote, okay? 92% of voters favor strict limits on government to protect the individual. Rasmussen. Then Rasmussen, and there are a bunch of other polls, okay? And I capture them on a website. I try to kind of keep up with that when I have time. But, Rasmussen points out, and this shows you the split in ideology that we have in this country right now. As a result, the gap today between the Americans who want to govern themselves, the We the People, and the politicians who want to rule over them, that's the political elite, both parties. Okay, I'm not picking on either party here. Maybe as big as the gap between the colonies and England during the 18th century. This is what the American Revolution was about, okay? We the people, and what's happened here, the sleeping giant, the We the People have awakened to what's going on here, and that the politicians we trusted by electing them and sending them to Congress have betrayed us. And they've set themselves up a very nice system where they lived, a very good life, etc., with our money. Now, just to recap, going door to door, misconceptions. I get this all the time. It's not a cold call, okay? You will have a walking list, and that's what I'm going to show you later. How do I find out whose door do I knock on to increase my probability that those people are going to be like-minded? They're going to be like mine, okay? Your concerned neighbor, that helps. I talked about people who are receptive because most of them already believe in those core principles that you're advocating. And most neighbors you're going to find out are just not engaged. They're not aware of what's going on in politics, etc. So a little teaching, a little education, a little prodding will get them concerned if they weren't already concerned of what's going on. Volunteer phone banks. Now I said, they're not as effective, but what we have learned in working with leaders around the country is they can be effective. So they're not as effective in getting out the vote, but they can be effective in growing your movement, your organization, your neighborhood. Okay, and we have Ralph Krause in Ohio, 73-year-old gentleman, really nice guy. He's like our star implementer of the Voices of America methodology in Ohio. And his background is engineering. He didn't envision to be involved in this political process either. Like me as a chemical engineer, this was not part of my vision, but here I am. So he's a real stickler in details. So I told him, look, you can make phone calls, here's what you say, and you'll be pretty effective, particularly if you're inviting people to come to your meetings, and then you recruit volunteers from those people who come to the meetings. So I said, okay, fine, but again, I emphasize, you have to do this as a person who believes in what you are talking about. So you have an enthusiasm, your commitment, you're committed to it, and you have an opening script. Look, I'm a concerned neighbor. I'm concerned about X, Y, Z. Are you concerned? So he made 36 calls. He sent me an email. Again, I didn't ask him for feedback. He just sent it to me. 36 calls. He said on average 4.4 minutes per call, 15 calls connected. Typically, when you go door to door or make phone calls, this is also an interesting statistic which throughout the 1900s has been in effect. 50% hit rate, meaning 50% of the people are home, either if you call them or if you go door to door, which means you need to make multiple trips, okay, if you want to get everyone home. And a lot of my volunteers loved the process so much, they were intent on getting every home that I assigned to them and meeting face to face, not just leaving a door hanger behind, but they wanted to talk face to face with everyone. Of the 15 people that Ralph talked with over the phone, 11 were interested in joining this organization. That's a 73% success rate. Many indicated they would bring others now that they were aware that there was an organization. And Ralph told me, and again, we hear this from a lot of leaders around the country, that, people don't realize in their own community, there are organizations, the We the People type organizations, that are average citizens coming together, wanting to take the power back from these elite politicians who are trying to run us, using our money. That's even worse. They use their own money trying to run us, that's one thing, but they're using our money. Now, the other point I want to make is nonpartisan, and this plays very well into people of faith, community of faith, because of a 501c3 concerns, okay? Going around with a principle message is nonpartisan. It's sustainable from election to election, okay? And it works across candidates. So you don't have to go door to door for a given candidate. Particularly today, you're going door to door saying, look, you need to educate yourself on the candidates. And oh, by the way, I may bring later on a nonpartisan voter guide, tell you where the candidates all stand, and you can choose. But, I'm asking you, if you believe in these principles, to educate yourself on the candidates and go and vote come November for the candidates who's most closely aligned to the principles you and I believe in, okay? I know nothing is perfect, and even Heinlein in his 1946 book said, don't expect a perfect candidate. You will always be able to pick on some things that they messed up on and voted wrong, blah, blah, blah. But find the one who is most closely aligned with the principles and values that you believe in. So the We the People initiative, that's principle-based, is sustainable. It doesn't advocate one candidate against the other. It covers all candidates and goes from election to election. So 2010 was very effective. That should carry right into 2012, regardless of the candidates, and should carry into the next elections beyond that. And here's another interesting, this floored me when I read this in Get Out the Vote Statistical Analysis. A nonpartisan effort going door to door is as effective from a Get Out the Vote standpoint as a partisan effort. So telling people you need to go and vote for X, Y, Z, or you need to vote for this party versus that party, it's no more effective than telling them, look, we understand what you believe in, what I believe in, please go and vote based on those principles. That's just as effective statistically. Powerful stuff. Here's a door hanger, and I'm going to be updating this here and putting on a website, and I'll use it in my own precinct. This is nonpartisan. People are shocked, like, what can you put out when it's a nonpartisan? Say no more to big government, debt, the individual with an income tax statement in hand being crushed by debt, that's the silent majority, that's us. Vote for candidates who support limited government, free markets, individual liberties. Principles. I'm not telling which candidate, I'm just saying vote for the ones who are most closely aligned. Tell your like-minded neighbors, friends, relatives to vote. Big government, State of the Union. That is just a report card. That is factual information, okay? Factual information. No one can debate this, argue it, make it go away. This is the truth. Now, it was the truth when I did this in 2010, okay? So the numbers might have changed, plus I'll modify it a bit, because now we also have, and that's why we're here today, the religious liberty assault by government, okay? So we have an assault on individual freedoms, which is now in play, which I'll be capturing on the new one. So we're dealing with factual information. This is a report card on what has the government done for us lately, okay? And so like I said, then encourage people to educate themselves. Now, a lot of the We the People organizations have candidate nights. They invite the candidates, and that's a great, and we have on our website a whole process. Warren Edstrom put that together, very effective. He did that for his whole congressional district. He was part of the 912, is part of the 912 organization, and they held candidate nights, very effective. And we captured the work process and how do you do that? What do you need to do to have candidate nights? Voter guides, there are lots of nonpartisan voter guides. Christian Coalition has a great voter guide. Abigail Adams Project out of Florida, that was started by Kimberly Fletcher. That's a great organization for voter guides as well. So you can hand those out to your neighbors as well. A nonpartisan meaning you put all the candidates down, and then based on key issues that are core to what you are advocating, you indicate what they stand for. So Okay, hopefully by now you realize the importance, the value, and what do I say? So then you may be asking yourself, so, okay, does it really all matter, okay? I mean, I've been wondering, like, if every vote counts even, you know? It's like, is it really all that important? And a lot of people, that's why they didn't go vote. They don't think it's all that important. So let me take you through that piece. First of all, we're dealing with assault on religious liberty here. There are a lot of people of faith who can be mobilized with our actions and need to be mobilized, and they need to be mobilized in these community of faith to do the most effective and efficient thing they can possibly do, and that is join this get out the vote work process. Not voter registration, not phone banking, all those kind of things. They need to become aware of this issue and then get engaged and do something, okay? Look at this. Mobilizing people of faith can have an insurmountable impact. There are 70.7 million Catholics in this country. Now, unfortunately, 50% of them have fallen for the social justice mantra, okay? There's nothing in the Bible and there's nothing in the core Catholic teachings that says it's okay to empower someone to steal from those who have and give to those who have not. What's in the Bible and the Catholic doctrine teachings is we should take care of neighbors who are less fortunate. That's a volunteer effort. As Christians, we should do that, and we do that, and that's why the social services run by the Catholic Church is the largest social services in this country. Okay? But some priests and a lot of bishops mistakenly have adopted the social justice mantra that, and I hear it all the time in intercessions in church, you know, where we say prayers, and it gets me mad because it's incorrect Catholic doctrine. Praying for government officials to take care of the less fortunate. That basically is saying, I'm praying that you, the government official, take from you to give to her because you have it and work for it, and she's deciding not to work. Sorry to pick on you. Okay? I mean, the problem with that, basically, and this came out of depression. I think Amity, whatever her name is, she's a great author, wrote about, she wrote it, The Forgotten Man. She wrote the book Forgotten Man. Just think about it. This is what's going on. I'm a neighbor. Well, I sit in the middle of two neighbors, right? And then there's a government. One neighbor, they're always working. They have 2 cars. This neighbor is struggling, doesn't have a car. Tells me he could use a car so he could look for a job. But he really doesn't have the initiative. So I'm looking at the situation saying, wow, this is really easy to fix. This guy's got 2 cars, this guy's got no car, he'll get a job if he gets a car. I call the government official. I say, government official, take 1 car from this guy, give it to that guy, and we'll have a more utopian society. Government official does exactly that. 3 out of 4 people feel great about what they did. That's social justice. I feel good because I made this happen. I made a more utopian society. This neighbor feels great, he got a car out of nowhere from the government. The government feels great because they helped create this more utopian society and, you know, equal society. The only person who feels bad is this person whose car we just stole. That's basically the forgotten man, that person right there. So not all Catholics are like-minded. This is why doing voter registration outside of the church in the vestibule in a Catholic church is insane, because you're registering 50% of the wrong people who don't believe like you. You need to find who's like-minded in the Catholic Church. Now, when you get to evangelicals, 95% of evangelicals believe like we do. Lutherans, probably 75%. So you have a better batting average when you go to the other, religions. And there are 100 million Protestant Christians. So, all religions are threatened by this because an omnipotent government needs to destroy religion because it's the last, formal institution that has any clout to stop an omnipotent government from ruling the people. The assault on religious freedom has alienated many constituents. It's very interesting. The African American community, you have a lot of black pastors now who are against gay marriage and against abortion. And the African community has forever been very conservative. But they've been misinformed. They haven't been aware of what those representatives stand for. I remember Kimberly Fletcher, the most powerful story she shared with me as part of this Abigail Adams project, is standing outside a black, an African American, a polling booth dominated by the African American community, and talking to two older women. Well, it all started with she came all dressed up in bush regalia, and it's like, you know, she said, I might as well have been wearing a Ku Klux Klan sheet. They chased me out of there, and she takes her kids along. I mean, it's like, this is a brave woman, this Kimberly Fletcher. And she said, well, I dumped all that stuff. That wasn't working. Then she happened to have Christian Coalition voter guides along. She pulled those out of the trunk, went back. Kids said, are we out of here? No, I'm not giving up. She went right back to where she stood, started handing out Christian Coalition voter guides. And now people were interested. They said, well, who are you? Well, I'm just trying to help here, educate people who will vote. Well, anyway, cut through the story. The two elderly black women said, wow, I didn't realize the representative I always vote for is for abortion. I don't stand for that. I'll never vote for him again. That's the power of the education through nonpartisan voter guides, okay? Don't be partisan. You don't need to. Hispanics, they're predominantly Roman Catholics. So to the extent they are understanding that there's an assault on religious liberty and specifically Catholic Church, that's where it's starting, okay? They're starting to wake up. Even the Catholic liberals, they're feeling embarrassed that they were supportive of candidates who are now turning against the very church they attend. Okay, so there's an opportunity here. Obviously, lots of people. Evangelical Christians are waking up. You know, in 2004, they turn out in droves. Then the parties, again, you know, I'm not for either party. They're both elitist. They use people. They use organizations. In 2004, they used the evangelicals to get out the vote, and then they betrayed them. And consequently, 2006 and 8 and 10, the evangelicals stayed away from voting. We need to change that. And the evangelicals are, in fact, waking up to this threat on religious liberty, and are mobilizing their people. I would say more effectively than the Catholic Church as a whole. You know, let's face it, the silent majority in this country is conservative or moderate. They're not liberal. There are only 20% in this country who are liberal, and I would maintain of those 20%, you have even a lower percentage thereof who believe in this truly omnipotent cradle-to-grave ideology. Okay? So really, you have 76% of the population that's more or less like-minded. That's why the polling shows, you know, you get 92% of the people who believe in the individual freedoms, etc. And again, you know, I see a lot of people writing like crazy. This will all be on the website. This presentation, the video, the PowerPoints, literally the slides I'm using, you can download them, okay? So I don't want you guys to get writer's cramp. Here, 2006, notice this. Just take a general election, the demographics of it. Turnout, 57%, like I said. You know, these elections, 60% of the people bother to vote, which is a shame, but that's the fact. 82,650,000 people voted. Registered people who did not vote, 62,350,000. Again, this is just more, you know, statistics to validate why getting out the vote, neighborhood organizing works. Now, in terms of does every vote count, here's some interesting perspective. I won't run through all these numbers because it gets a little cumbersome. But in a congressional, U.S. congressional district, it takes 231 votes per precinct to win that district. That's it. I want to now, and later on I'll show you, bring down, you know, I said 1,000 to 1,200 voters per precinct. Because you may be thinking, wow, you know, a lot of doors I'm going to knock on. Well, I already showed you my own example, 280 households. You get 6 volunteers, 40 households. Very manageable, 2 hours for an election, okay? we're dealing in hundreds of households or voters that will make a difference in terms of winning a given precinct. So this is each and every one of you and your friends in their neighborhoods can have a tremendous impact for each of your precincts. If you win that precinct, that's all you need to do, and everyone else has that task, we can take back this country for we the people, okay? If I lose an election 60-40, all I need is convince 46 people to switch votes. You know, because that's a swing of 92, right? Because I take 46 away from my opponent and I get those 46 and I win the next time, even though I got trounced in one election. Now, again, the point, with 20% liberals, they have been very effective. Why have they been effective with 20% of the people? When 76% of the silent majority goes about raising families and working hard and trusting their congresspeople, you know, they're not able to match them. Well, the problem is we've been so busy, we haven't figured out what needs to be done, whereas that 20%. The ground game, this is what they've been perfecting for decades. The ground game, this is what they're doing this year. I just wrote the most recent newsletter about, I researched based on news articles, what's all going on around the country by our opposition. What are they doing? It's all focused on the ground game. It's not going to be as much media, etc. It's all ground game oriented, enabled with software, etc. So they've got that down to a science, and that's why with 20% of the vote, they can have the election impact. Jimmy Carter won the presidency in Ohio with 1 vote per precinct, 650. And of course, we know Florida, 537 votes in Florida in 2000. You know, this is the hanging chat, you know, for those of you who've forgotten some of the history, you know, forever we'll have visions of the hanging chat counting, right? I got this from a PowerPoint presentation from our opposition. Again, they've got this down to science. This was in 2008, Democrat Party. This is from the National Democrat Party. These are available on the internet for everyone to download. That's where I started my initial learnings about how to do this neighborhood organizing. Reverse engineer. Let's see what the left is doing. And then I started reading books, etc., and you know, all that's captured on the website. But look, they put out slides like this, that if we had 10 more Democratic votes per precinct, victory. That's it. And Ohio is right there, star on it, 2008. 10 votes per precinct. So you in your neighborhood, if you were the Democrat going out, if you got 10 more people to go out and vote who were like-minded and believed in hope and change, you would win Ohio if you had people in every precinct doing that, etc. And then they had slides on, you know, here, 50 more Democrat votes. I'm trying to just make the impression on you, it doesn't require many votes per precinct. This is very doable and very doable by any one individual who decides, you know, I can do this. This guy is showing me what needs to be done. He's giving me some script ideas. He's giving me door hanger ideas. And he's telling me about how to recruit volunteers. I can do this because the numbers are small. This is Texas. And I would say, I don't know all that much about Pennsylvania, okay? But I know this is very left-leaning territory I'm in right here, okay? All right, so think the opposite of what I'm about to share with you. Texas, Williamson County general election. In 2004, you see all the red? Only 2 precincts out of the 92 were controlled by the Democrats. You notice 2006, 2 years later, almost a third of those precincts went Democrat. They hit this county very hard with get out the vote initiatives, their ground game, and this is the effectiveness. So if you say, okay, Pennsylvania, predominantly blue, with a few you know, red specks, you can do this. This is very doable. I gave a presentation in Cincinnati, and some guy walked up to me. He was all distraught about this slide. I said, why are you so upset about it? He said, well, I'm from Williamson County. It used to be very conservative, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but this is a fact, okay? You guys weren't paying attention. So anyway, and you know, my focus is on winning the congressional, the Senate districts, the presidential elections. But you know what? if you learn how to do this as a we the people in your neighborhood precincts, you can win basically any down election you want, starting with the school board. Because you will have an organization, a capability in place based on principles and values that can be mobilized for school board elections. And you're talking, in those elections, or even state senate or state rep elections, okay? Because you're talking, those campaigns don't have a lot of money, they don't have a lot of volunteers, okay? So to the extent you go around advocating principles and values and then give out nonpartisan voter guides, stay away from endorsements, okay? You can be very effective. Now, Warren Edstrom, Knox County, my co-founder of the Voices of America, he used this process, got himself elected to the Board of Education. His kids are private, you know, they're educated at home, homeschool. But he got himself elected to the Board of Education of school district. Since then, because he's very forceful, very knowledgeable, etc., he's convinced all of the remaining folks on the Board of Election in terms of what they ought to be doing for the kids. They fired the superintendent, and now he's coming up with lots of innovative ideas on what they can do. He, in fact, is entertaining a charter school board going beyond just a charter school. He says, why not just have the whole school district be a charter school district? That can be, and now he's also formed an Ohio Board of Election, or it's an organization of all the Board of Elections through Ohio. School boards to compete with the existing one, which is, of course, you know, incumbent teachers who kind of get into that. So, and the reason I share that about Warren is because it makes it come alive what you can do with this methodology and how people of value and principles can take back the school boards within their communities. Now, you know, you might be sitting there throughout this whole discussion, particularly when I show you the statistical analysis of what works in elections. Well, why isn't the GOP doing all this? You know, Pete references a lot of things the Democrats are doing, and they are, but why isn't the GOP doing it? Well, here's why I think they're not. First of all, the liberals, they have to mobilize their base. They're only 20% of them. Okay, they have to mobilize that base and get every possible vote out of that base because they're only 20%. The GOP, on the other hand, has 76% of the population to work with, the moderates and the conservatives. So they can be, you know, more sloppy, less intensive, because if they just get more than that 20% every election, you know, okay, then it's a toss-up. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. The other problem is, of course, they don't have ready access to volunteers, whereas our opposition has access to ACORN, paid, you know, hourly wage to go around, SEIU, the union. So there are a lot of existing organizations on the left that can be mobilized to get out the vote. And in fact, based on my research, this November, all of the unions are spending a lot of money, and it's predominantly focused on mobilizing people at the ground game level to get out the vote. It's not focused on media, etc. Also, they prefer centralized message, the GOP. You know, so that's why you get the glossies, the mass advertising on television, centralized phone banks, blah, blah, blah. So how do you focus your effort? I mean, this is just a few slides because this is very simple. You need a voter record. Voter records are public information. You can get that from any board of election, your local county board of election, or the state Secretary of State. In Ohio, we can actually download these records from our Secretary of State for all 88 counties. Some charge a nominal fee, but basically the important thing is you get, you want this for your neighborhood precinct, okay? And you get addresses, you find out how people are registered party-wise, and you also find out how frequently they vote, okay? And you use that information in a chart like this, because you know, of the 1,000-some people in your neighborhood, you don't knock on all doors, because I'll tell you one thing, knock out people who are registered but never vote, and believe it or not, people do that too, okay? People don't register, but some people register and never vote. So why bother engaging them? Okay, don't waste your time. This is all about efficiency and effectiveness, okay? Liberal voters, well, I told you, you don't go around debating, arguing, so ignore them. Conservative voters who always vote, well, why bother reminding them? You already know they always vote, okay? And you probably have a good idea how they vote. So the people you focus on are the conservative voters who are the fair weather voters. Don't always go vote. You know, it all depends. If the weather is nice, maybe I'll go, maybe not. You want to make sure they definitely go. And then the swing voters. The swing voter that always votes and sometimes votes, okay? And in this election, based on the messaging you have, will go out and vote. And here's an example from another precinct close by in Southwest Ohio, just to show you. You know, so you have, forget all this there in the interest of time. You have 647 actual voters who showed up in the election out of the 1,000 possible, okay? So that's a little over 60% who vote in this election. You have 135 registered Democrats, 287 independents, 226 Republicans. I need 324 votes to win. So, you know, just for simplicity, I'll assume all the Republicans are going to vote, you know, one way, like a Republican, and I'm a Republican candidate, so I'll count these guys, even though, you know, you have sometimes voters in this bunch, so they need to be reminded. But let's just assume they always go. So, you know, all I need to win, to get the 320 vote, is out of those 226, out of the 287 independents, all I need is 98 independents. So, you know, I could say, oh, I only need to knock on as many doors of those independents until I come to 98, and I have 98 commitments that they're going to vote for me, and I win the election. And for this precinct, okay? And if you get people to repeat that in every precinct, you'll win the election for whatever you're running for. In the primary, it's even easier because only 30% vote, okay? Of the 1,000, 324 actual voters showed up. It's just amazing how this is, I mean, this is human nature we're talking about, okay? Human nature doesn't change. It hasn't evolved, in other words. And we have 324 people who showed up. Now, this is why Rush Limbaugh's, what do you call it again? Go and register as a Democrat worked.
Operation Chaos.
Operation Chaos, there you go. Because look, 68 Democrats voted in their primary, okay? So with Rush's, you know, suggestion, hey, register as a Democrat and you can, you know, you only need 35 votes to win, you know, to get the candidate elected who you like on the Democrat side. The Republicans have 113, so you need 57. So you can see, you know, in a primary, that's where we the people can actually be most impactful because so few people show up to vote. So if you can mobilize people who are like-minded in your neighborhoods to go into primaries, you can get candidates out of both the Democrat and the Republican Party who are more like we are and believe, you know, are most closely aligned with what we believe in. So that's very, very impactful there. So next steps. You know, I say, I'm giving a lot of webinars to the national pro-life organizations, and they're really, you know, of course, recognize the threat on religious liberties, etc. And I'm using this, I started using this slide, and it was very impactful because the point I made to the pro-life organizations is, look, there is an increased threat. I mean, this is why you're all awakening, because this threat on religious liberty now, okay? And what you stand for, and providing contraception and abortion services to people of faith in, say, the Catholic education, social service, and hospital systems, you know, against their belief. And so we need new tactics. The current tactics aren't working. Well, what are the current tactics, and what am I proposing as a new tactic? Well, you know, this year there are 400,000 people who marched on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade in Washington, D.C. Most people didn't even know that. Fox News, I think, is the only one that covered it with a 3-minute blurb. That's it. Okay? If no one covers it, did it happen? You know, it's like the tree falling in the woods, and no one heard it, did it really fall? Well, that's a lot of money and effort that went into going to D.C. to march on that anniversary to make a point. My new tactic suggestion, is, look, if I can recruit 300,000 of these people, there are 300,000 precincts in all of the United States. If each person who went to D.C. took that time and money and instead organized their neighborhood, we could be much more impactful, guys. Okay? And you'll spend less time and money doing that, okay? Praying and protesting in front of abortion clinics. It's become less effective because, you know, the municipalities are passing all sorts of rules and regulations, where you can stand, what you can have in your hands, and all this kind of stuff. And again, neighborhood organizing only requires 2 to 4 hours. It's less intimidating. You're not standing in hostile territory, you know, as cars go by and all this kind of stuff. Hey, you're going around your neighborhood 2 to 4 hours per election cycle, not going around as, you know, I'm against abortion. You don't want to do that. Stay away from social issues. Go around. I'm for individual freedom. I'm for limited government that allows us to decide at the local level, you know, what's right, what's wrong, etc. Letters, phone calls, waste of time. I mean, the Tea Partiers learned that very early on. I mean, you know, they were told, call, write, do whatever. Both parties, they're unaccountable to we the people. We lost control of these guys. We put in power. And actually, George Washington, I didn't have that slide in here, actually, in his farewell address, stated that that is a concern, that the very people who get themselves elected by we the people will turn against those people for the sake of the power and the money involved. And that's what we're witnessing here, right? So better yet, where we are right now, I mean, we the people movement is being feared by both parties because they see in 2010, and you see in a lot of these primary elections in Texas, Ted Cruz winning against the incumbent GOP, okay? It's like, wow, Texas is a big state, might as well be a country all by itself. And the conservatives, the we the people, managed to get this nobody who never has been in politics called Ted Cruz elected to Senate, right? It was a Senate race. To Senate, knocking off the GOP anointed candidate who would have gone by, you know, marched the party line. So they're starting to see the effectiveness of the We the People movement, and they will start paying more and more attention to us. So again, just to finish off this whole presentation, all you need is volunteers, a walk list, a simple script, and door hangers. I would encourage everyone to start identifying like-minded people in your communities of faith. Start out by talking to the rabbi, the pastor, and priest to try to get them engaged, to maybe make a pulpit announcement, put something in a bulletin. But, you know, I'm here to tell you, we've seen variable success. Barbara Samuelson has been immensely successful in New York State with the Brooklyn Archdiocese, etc. I mean, she's doing great work there, and Paul Brown has been working with her to capture a lot of the learnings, and they're all on our website, of how do you start these church groups and get them engaged. So start out, nevertheless, with the priest, rabbi, pastor, and encourage them to make some announcement that you would like to reach out to like-minded people in the church, and then have orientation, education, planning meetings. And after that, once you've identified people, you take them out of the church and then get out to vote. Because if you do get out the vote out of the church, the pastors, priests, rabbis are going to get very nervous. Even though it's nonpartisan, it does not threaten their 501c3 because you're not endorsing candidates, okay? But nevertheless, we have no time to waste in debates and arguments, etc. You find the like-minded people in the church, you take them out, and then start meeting at the local library or wherever, and you teach them this methodology, and you win elections. Like I said, all of this is captured. All the good work that Paul and Barbara Samuelson have been doing is captured on our website. Actually, we've got like a bunch of separate entries now. We've gotten more sophisticated since I put this together. But we literally have step-by-step instructions based on the experience, the field experience that Barbara and Paul have had implementing this. It's all captured there. And actually, we're getting so much interest nationally in this Faith in Action initiative as a subset of the Voices of America, that I created. I bought a new website name, and it will take you straight to the relevant, Faith in Action part of our website. And all you need to do is have people go to faithful-action.org. Okay? Yeah, so that's all you need to tell them, faithful-action.org. It'll take you right to the relevant part of Voices of America. Religious leaders, Carter and Dolan. There are a number who understand what's at stake and are saying, look, Catholics have an obligation to bring value into public dialogue. Politics is a noble call, and patriotism is a virtue. Unwise to yield to the temptation to be frustrated by politics. Laity charism is to be involved in politics. I don't know what charism is, so I look it up. Extraordinary power given a Christian by the Holy Spirit for the good of the church. And don't be misled by people who say we shouldn't be involved. So there are a lot of very high-level religious leaders who understand what's at stake and are trying to do the right thing. I won't go through the success example, but Barbara's been very successful. Volunteers, one thing, and again, this will be in the whole slides that you can download. The one thing you need to remember recruiting volunteers, you need to ask them in person, okay? Don't send out emails, don't stand in front of a group asking for volunteers, see me back there in the corner. Believe me, I've done that, I've been there, and it gets really lonely at the end of the meeting when you're all by yourself in a corner, no one comes, okay? So don't call, don't email, don't stand in front of a group. Find out who the likely people are you want to have help you in your neighborhood, organizing, and go to them and ask them in person. And to the extent you can be very specific, I'm asking 2 to 4 hours of your time. I will give you the list of where you go based on a voter record, which I understand. You don't even need to understand that. I'll figure it out from there. And I'll give you a script, which is very short and brief. And maybe I'll give you some door hangers, and that's it. Your volunteers are all set. In terms of how to create a walking list, it's helpful if you have software to help you. And I know after this meeting, some of us are going to be talking about our votes and some of the softwares that are out there from American Majority, American for Prosperity. Any software you can get access to is a great help. That helps you figure out very quickly using the software and whose door I should be knocking on in my neighborhood, okay? And you're stacking the deck in terms of who is like-minded, likely to be like-minded in my neighborhood, okay? But if you don't have software, on our website, under Approach, we have a step-by-step walkthrough of, what do you do in terms of you get the voter record from the Secretary of State or your Board of Election, what do you do with it to basically get the same end result, i.e. a walk list of which doors should I knock on and who are likely to be like-minded. And, lastly, there are already a lot of We the People organizations in most of the communities, so I would say people of faith and communities of faith who are wanting to mobilize and do this, just reach out to them and use what they already know and have them help you with getting out the vote efforts. You don't need to reinvent this all from scratch. Time is too short. November is almost here. Then here's our website. There's a newsletter, PowerPoint presentation. That's the main homepage, but you need to go to the Faith in Action part of that. And, to finish up, we need to act now, okay? I mean, in Ohio at least, this will depend on different states, but absentee ballots can already be requested in Ohio, and they need to be sent in by November 3rd. So you want to get people, we say there are 3 or 4 contact points in this neighborhood organizing. The first is to make sure they're like-minded, encourage them to vote, but then you encourage them to use absentee ballots, vote ASAP, because once they do that, you can check them off. You can check with the Board of Election if they already voted, you can check them off. So, of the 280 people in my precinct, then I could check them off. Okay, they voted through absentee ballot. Early voting, like I said, a lot of states allow people before the election. In Ohio, it's October 2nd and November 2nd. This is a well-kept secret. The left knows this all, they've made a science of this. They're the ones who advocated for all this. But our side doesn't know this. And a lot of people I share this with are like, wow, I didn't know you could do this. Early voting means you can literally go to the Board of Election in your county and vote early before the day of election. And they have voting booths all set up. It's like you're going to your local polling place. And people in buses come, okay? They have lots of booths set up for early voting. And Golden Week, like I said earlier, there's literally that 1 week, at least in Ohio, where you can not only go to the Board of Election and register to vote, but then you walk right into your little booth and actually vote. And so that's another point of contact, okay? If people aren't voting through absentee ballot, then you'd say, hey, go to early voting. We want to make it real easy for you. You know, go to early voting. Well, where do that? At the Board of Election. Give them the address. And then election day, of course, November 6th, go and vote. So there's some more detail here. Now, just a few slides to finish this off with. John Adams recognized the Constitution was made only for moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And I think we're starting to see some of these elements that you know, to the extent you move away from morality and religion in society, then it becomes selectively applying laws and those kind of things. And here's James Garfield, 20th President of the United States, same kind of message. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of the nation do not aid in controlling the political force. And that's really the whole message of what I'm sharing with you is an appeal for people of faith, for communities of faith, to wake up to this, you know, threat to religious liberty, threat to freedom of religion and individual freedoms that's so embedded in the Constitution and our founding fathers believed in. You know, if we don't rise up to the occasion now and do the job of what we can do most efficiently and effectively to impact politics and policy, I mean, we will lose this country. And that was foreseen by a lot of great, you know, people before us in history, because these guys were studied in history themselves. I mean, these were smart people. Samuel Adams recognized it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires. So, you know, to the extent, I mean, this is really motivating. And a lot of people call me, they're disenchanted, oh, this is going on, that going on. I said, look, everything we are doing in 2012 is a net extra versus 2008. It will make a difference. And, you know, that kind of addresses what Samuel Adams is saying, you know, that you know, if you get enough people mobilized, it doesn't have to be everybody, you can make an enormous difference. So with that, we'll address some questions, and we can have some of the other discussion. Thank you so much for your attention. You've been very good during this hour and 15 minutes presentation. Got a little longer-winded because I inserted some things here and there, but hopefully that was beneficial to the whole presentation. Thank you very much. Okay.